Good morning, everybody. It's your Self Shift crew back for another podcast. And we've got quite a topic today, but let's quickly do some introductions. You got Patrick here, Doug,
Doug.
and of course,
Jeff,
Derek.
hey everyone, good morning.
Everybody hopefully has had plenty of coffee this morning because this topic is going to be one for the books, I think. And what we're going to discuss today is you can't be lonely if you like the person you're alone with, right? So this covers or is attached or connected to a lot of the different topics that we discuss on the Self Shift podcast here. But as we always do, I'm going to start with a quick quote. And I had to go back a little bit in time, actually to the 17th century for this one. But I've heard this quote over the years, and it's resonated with me. It's from Pascal, the great 17th century French philosopher. And he says, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone, which I think is quite profound. And just, doing a little bit of research before the podcast here is that, there's a lot of truth into what he's saying there. And I'll make it personal myself, is that when you're alone or when you're sitting in solitude and actually thinking or meditating, you tend to deal with difficult issues, right? It's easy to be in a large crowd or whatever, not easy, but when you're engaged with a lot of folks, it's a little bit easier to avoid looking at yourself, looking at your vulnerabilities, challenges that you may have or whatever. And at least on my journey, the more that I've got into, meditation, being solitude and being in nature and that type of thing, the ability for me to deal with those issues, right? Not avoid them, because as we've talked about before, I'm an avoider, but being able to sit and, do meditation and start dealing with the inner work and stuff like that has been like super valuable for me. And I've gotten to the point over the last, several years where I look forward to it. I know you guys do as well, but, my meditation practice and spending time reading, before the podcast, Doug was making fun of my computers in the background there, but working on PCs and doing things that I really enjoy, taking online classes, that type of thing. And it really, at least helps me to become what I think is a better version of myself. And so let's go around the horn here. That was a pretty long preamble. Doug, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So the term solitude is the term I didn't really think about it that much, but in all our different learning journeys, at one point I read a part of a book that talked about like solitude is like it's being alone and giving yourself time to like think, and like just the concept of solitude I just wasn't really thinking about, and like light bulbs went off as far as making me think back to when I was a kid. You spent a lot of time by yourself. You retreated to your room to get away from your family, rode your bike to visit a friend, like you were alone, and or you went on a long road trip. You didn't have an iPad to look at and things like that. And like I was just thinking, I think a lot about it, how like I don't have that time. I don't have that much time that I sit around just thinking. And I was a daydreamer. I was a goal-oriented kid. So whenever I was alone, I was thinking about all the things I wanted to accomplish, or, the life I wanted to have and all those kinds of things. And, when you have less solitude because you just don't take the time to be alone and think about things, it really does take away from the quality of your life, as far as, you have to find that time. And I think that's another reason that mindfulness ended up being resonating so big with me, because when you take the time to slow down and breathe and think and go through a mindfulness meditation session, it is solitude, and it is like bringing you back to yourself. So that was very rambly, but the point is, like, life is different these days with the digital devices and all the stuff, and people just don't find time to sit with themselves, like you're saying, and it's such a key thing.
Yep. Derek, I know this is near and dear to your heart as well.
Yeah, I'll say one of my favorite, verses from the Bible. I don't want to turn this into a religious conversation, but one of the quotes from Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I'm God." And, for me on the journey of life thus far, I never understood what stillness was until I found myself in complete brokenness. So, in that brokenness, I've discovered the power of solitude and the power of being alone and the power of finding a way forward discovered through that loneliness, through that grief of some loss, to find the space of being okay with not being okay. And I had that journey of discovery of what stillness truly is through a lot of trials and tribulations in life. Within the last 5 years, I would say, it really resonated. So, again, be still and understanding what that means and what's behind that. You connect with something much bigger and greater than just yourself, but you discover who you truly are in those moments. So that's how I open today with one of my favorite verses there that really has transformed my journey in life, connecting with what that means.
Yeah, no, that's well said. And I'm gonna make it real here, because we've talked about solitude, we've talked about, being alone, meditating and that type of thing. But there's another concept, part of the subject is liking the person you're alone with. And I can
Mm.
tell you that this was difficult for me on my journey, in the sense that going back, 15 years or so, when I was alone and I had to, face things, become self-aware, right? Deal with things. I didn't like the person that I was, right? And the fact that I started getting into meditation and self-reflection and growth and that type of thing forced me to deal with those issues. What do I need to change about my behavior? What do I need to change about my life? What am I unhappy with? And listen to yourself. I was listening to a podcast the other day from a famous psychologist who provides really good guidance, but one of his words were, you know, internally, if you listen to yourself, you pretty much know the right thing to do, right? And that's very, very true for me.
Mm.
But, coming to the fact that I can sit with myself now and be proud of the person that I am. Not that I don't have a long way to go. I do, right? But it's no longer this sense of intense discomfort where I'm constantly ruminating over things that I've done, and I should have done this, and I should be here now, but I'm not, and those types of things. So again, it's not just being lonely or not just being solitude. It's getting comfortable. You said it really well, Derek, being okay with not being okay. Because when you get to that point, or being comfortable with not being comfortable and leaning into it, because the only way, what is the famous saying from Carl Jung? The only way over something is through it, or whatever that saying is. You can't avoid it. You've got to push through it. Right. And so that's been really, really key for me. I mean, also putting on, because I didn't mention this earlier, but I know we're all journalers, right? And the fact that you journal when you're, in a space of, being alone and stuff like that. And that really, really helps as well. And again, I want to, because, and Doug, you nailed this earlier. It's the way, it's so different than when we were young, because especially for people that if given the chance will avoid the tough stuff, the tough feelings, the tough emotions. And, you can jump on YouTube and it's 5 hours later and you've watched cat videos and whatever, and you've avoided things. And the mechanisms for avoidance are just all over the place today. And dealing with that, and actually don't avoid, because avoidance makes things worse, at least in my experience, and actually getting in and dealing with the tough emotions and working through them. And also, I know, Doug, I'm going to steal one of your quotes, but is the self-compassion. Be kind to yourself. Because, I've got a book somewhere over here from Shauna Shapiro. She's a psychologist, I think at Stanford, but she wrote a good book called Good Morning, I Love You, in which she talks about the power of self-compassion is so transformative, right? And they talk about the fMRI studies they do, and I firmly believe that. So getting in there, facing the issues that you need to face, but with self-compassion. And I think as it relates to that, at least from my perspective, I'm going to go on, and I've said this before, I'm going to say it again, is that I'm a pathological introvert. So if left to my own accord, I will find a way to be alone, right? And that always has been pleasant for me. I've used it as an avoidance behavior in the past. I think I'm just introverted as well. But the fact that I now use it to, self-growth and self-development and that type of thing. And what it's done for me is, this time that I spend meditating, it's really increased my self-awareness, right? And we talk about it all the time. I'm able to observe my emotions, my thoughts as an observer, right? We are not our thoughts. Also, self-acceptance. I tell you, for me, being able to finally accept who you are with all of my imperfection has been pretty transformative. And that's, I laugh about it because it's real for me now. 10 years ago, I judged myself to be a bad person or whatever, and the fact that I can accept myself and learn and grow from it, accept and then take action aligned to my core values is really helpful. We talk about mindfulness all the time. If you're sitting with yourself and leaning into things, that is mindfulness. And also we talk about personal growth. I think of everything that I've done, in addition to, going to the gym and eating good and that type of thing, my meditation practice and sitting with myself and dealing with things has been the biggest component to my personal self growth.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit a lot of points across the wide thing there, but I think a lot of people avoid solitude, avoid being alone because they don't want to engage with the negative self-talk. I think for me personally, I'm really good at negative self-talk. If that's a thing to be good at, but part of our journey has been learning how to deal with that. But again, it makes you avoid. I don't want to be alone with myself because the thoughts will start, and so it's all about kind of reframing what you're thinking about. It's all about finding a way to like yourself and find ways to, what one of the things we talk about is, again, like reality, the story we tell ourselves about the things that are happening, or the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves aren't the facts, right? Reality is reality. It's how we perceive it and how we tell ourselves about it. So like, a key part, and I will say, like, I haven't been able to find my way to really embrace journaling, but I think journaling is probably a huge tool to kind of sit by yourself, prompt yourself, and work through those thoughts. But one other place I'll go for a minute is, I was thinking about this the other day, but when you look at life, it's like the series of phases that you go through, right? Because you're a kid, and then you're a high school kid, and then you're college, and you have relationships and all those things, and how much you're alone changes through those things. And then you get into, marriage, and it's just you and the wife. And, it's important to find time for yourself in those things. Then you have kids, and life's just chaotic and busy for 20 years. And if you don't really make it a point, you don't find the time to reflect on yourselves and how you're feeling about yourself and how you want to grow and all those things. And then right now we're all kind of approaching, I don't know how long it'll be for any of us, but like we're thinking about retirement and things like that. And boy, you're going to have time for yourself in retirement.
Yeah.
And so you really got to think about how are you going to spend time, and all those things. Just throwing out a few concepts there around, like, there's a lot of opportunity to be alone, and there's, as you go through life, there's phases. Anyways, don't know if that made sense.
No, it does. It makes perfect sense. And Derek, maybe we should, and Doug, of course, make this even more real for folks. Like Derek, and I don't want to put you on the spot, like a practical example, like in your journey of where have you used this technique of sitting with yourself, leaning into things that may be unpleasant, but you got to deal with the unpleasance, right?
Yeah.
Demands to be felt, right?
Yeah.
Emotions demand to be felt. And like I've said before, Doug's the master of negative self-talk. I was the master of suppressing things for
Mm-hmm.
years and years. Just bottle them up, man. If you push them down as far as you can, they'll go away. Guess what? They don't. They come back later. And you
Yeah.
eventually have to process them. So again, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you want to share anything that's been
Yeah.
helpful on your journey, that would be great.
I'll share a powerful example of the journey and going through a divorce, and the undoing of all that is a grief, right? I mean, to go
Yeah.
through a divorce is a loss, and it's like losing a loved one. And I remember at the high point of all of that, I'll call it negative emotion just to summarize, and everybody can relate to some negative emotion that happens through a loss of something. I remember sitting at a park bench in Louisville and staring out at the water and just crying my eyeballs out, just with that deep release of grief, and being able to bring myself in that moment to a place of finding some way to find some form of connection back to self was like what was happening in that moment. Now that I look back, after I processed that, I look back, is releasing that grief, like what you're sharing, is like letting it out, not suppressing it, not holding it in, just letting it out. And I was alone. I was on a park bench, and it was coming out. And after I did that, because they say when you cry or you have a release like that, you feel better afterwards. And after I got done doing that and processing that moment, reflecting, I felt better. And I started that journey along with a lot of support, like what are here for one another, of people around me. I started connecting with myself differently from that point on. And I remember from that point on starting to be okay with not being okay. Finding a way to comfort myself through the pain and sorrows of the journey of dissolving things that no longer serve your best interest. And so that's a good practical example for me of finding self in aloneness, and bringing it together.
Yeah, that's a powerful one. I know you've shared that in the past. I'm going to give you, I'll give another example, not as profound as yours, but bringing the concepts of you're not lonely if you're okay with the person you're alone with, right? And this is, an example of the fact that, my children, I'm uh, an empty nester at this point, and I do have a grandchild. He's 2 at this point. But for, the first year or so, the new parents required quite a bit of help, right? And so I would frequently find myself either I was helping them or my wife was helping them. But there would be many occasions where it's a Friday night or a Saturday night and I'm alone. And I know that can be uncomfortable for folks. Like it's Friday night and I'm alone. What is that all about? Or Saturday night and I'm alone. What am I supposed to do? But given the fact that, of my journey and then I've been able to, actually be proud of myself and that type of thing, I would look forward to it. Well, I'm going to do this. I'm going to, take a programming class on a Friday night, which, gosh, that's so nerdy. But, that type of thing, which I enjoy. Or I also like to work on electric guitars. There's probably a couple on the thing over there. Just working on an electric guitar on a Friday night, or reading a book, doing some self-study, doing a meditation, building a fire by myself, on the patio out here, in the chimney and that type of thing, where I was completely content being alone, you know, thinking through things, doing my meditation and not, you know, realizing that with the work that I've done over the last several years, or it's been more than several years, a decade at this point, and getting comfortable with who I was and self-acceptance and self-compassion, it was actually really cool, right? And just being able to be with myself, be comfortable with myself, not fear of missing out on anything, and just enjoying the evening, right? So that's a personal example of of how that's just being comfortable with yourself. Another thing that I've used in the business world is, and I meditate daily. I think all of us meditate daily. But if I know it's going to be an especially difficult day, let's say for maybe not difficult, but challenging, where, I've got to do a really big presentation, or I know there's going to be a contentious meeting or something like that. I actually look even more to being alone and doing my morning meditation, because I know that if I can get myself to a point where, you know, you're okay, man, it may not be the most pleasant thing, but you're going to be okay. And the fact that I'm, bringing it back, you may have a thought, you observe the thought and come back to the breathing. And when you realize, I'm at a point that, regardless of what happens, maybe I'll do the worst presentation that I've ever done in my life, and I've done some bad ones, but it's going to be okay. I'm good with, my preparation. I've been able to, ground myself, get into my parasympathetic nervous system and that type of thing. And I find that I am so much more comfortable doing the presentation or dealing with the meeting, actually even looking forward to it, because I know, it's okay. Everything's going to be cool. So, wow, that was a rambling one as well. Doug, I can sense you're going to hit us with some nuggets here.
I'll just I'll offer a quote I found, and it's from Unknown. I don't know who that is, but your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship you have. And I tell you, that is so true, because when I'm unhappy with myself, I tend to, that comes out in my interactions with others and those kind of things. And a lot of times, even I might be projecting onto someone else thing where I'm saying it's them, but really it's me, and that kind of thing. But, a tool, again, meditation, mindfulness has become a big thing for all of us, like you're saying. But I found my way to it because of a book called 10% Happier by Dan Brown. And it's a really good book because it goes through his life as a journalist into where he, as a journalist, started to explore religion and mindfulness and all these different things, and it led him to figuring out that, like, mindfulness and meditation. But the book is 10% Happier because it's like, can I just be a little bit more happy? And a lot of the times that happiness starts with how you think about yourself. And how you treat yourself and all those kind of things. And there's an app that with that, and that's the app I use when I do mindfulness. And the reason I use it is they have all these topics out there, and you can find a 10-minute mindfulness thing on self-acceptance or on self-compassion or rumination and things like that. And a lot of times related to work or career and things, just like you were saying, Patrick, on a day I know, or after a night that I didn't sleep well, or I know something big's coming up, I'll go find a particular topic and I'll do it. And it goes back to, again, you start to become an observer of your feelings versus like the experiencer of your feelings. And it's so helpful. So anyways, trying to highlight a useful tool and just say, again, it all starts with being comfortable with yourself. Be kind to yourself.
Yeah, dude, I think that was the quote of the day, because that's the underlying theme of, I think, everything we're talking about. Like even the examples that I gave, because if you're comfortable with yourself, it reflects on everything. If you're not, and I know you said this, I just want to amplify it. If you're not happy with yourself, you treat people badly and you interpret everything that they're doing as a personal attack. So that's really, really well said. All right.
Awesome.
And I think we are coming up on time. So let's go around the horn. Derek, what are your parting thoughts?
Well, the thing I'll just share is this is a journey. It's not going to be perfect. At times it's going to be messy. Embrace it. I would say that, to find that true, authentic self that we all long for and desire, you're going to have to go through things to grow through them. So, you got to go through it to grow through it. So I encourage you today that, if you find yourself in a spot of loneliness or unhappiness with yourself, start the journey and just take a walk and breathe some fresh air and just count your blessings that you're breathing today and realize that you're not alone. You have lots of support resources around you. We're here for you. Tune back into our podcast. You got this. You can do this.
Well said. Doug?
I think, although this is kind of a difficult topic, but I think this was a really good one. And if anyone listening, one person out there, takes the time to just say, you know what, I am hard on myself. And you know what, I can go spend some time with myself and try to journal and learn those things. I really want to steal your typical end of show quote, but I'll let you do it.
No, it's all yours, brother.
A really good tool is just getting curious, right?
Yeah.
I'll let you have the wording, but get curious about, why are you acting like that? Why are you thinking like that? Or the other thing you really hit was, be curious just to go learn. Like a great way to get yourself out of your negative self spiral is just say, what's something I want to learn about? What's something I'm curious about? And go start looking into it. Look how to repair electric guitars or whatever. Like, it's not just about get curious with yourself, but just get curious. There's so much out there in life. I feel like if any day I learned something, that was a good day, a positive day. So that's how I'll leave it.
Yep. Nope. Very, very good. You guys both nailed some points there in the home stretch. Like one of the things, and I'll just kind of wrap it up, is the authenticity part of it. That is how I learned to be authentic, right? When you sit with yourself and you're like, I've agreed to do this, or I'm going to do that tomorrow, or I don't even want to do it, right? I'm doing it because I want people to like me, or I want to present this, persona that I may not even be. So anyway, I think really good topic. I think we might have to expand on this one with some more practical things, like even some teaching folks how to meditate or journal and that type of thing. You mentioned an app, Doug, so I do use Calm. I know you use the 10% Happier. I don't really like guided meditations that much, but I like the Daily J on there, and Tamara Levitt has a really good meditation on a daily basis, so that's really good. All right, I think you forgot one of your quotes, Doug.
No, I said be kind to yourself. I'm waiting for you to hit us.
Okay, I didn't hear you say be kind to yourself, and also be curious, not judgmental.
Yes.
All right, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up. Until next time, I hope everybody has a great week, and we'll see you next weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.